laid down for lots of things. And this is an extreme, but you've seen it before where guys have violated the league's, conduct policy. And 1 game for one guy, 6 games for another guy for similar sort of infractions. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on. What changed here? And so I think there hasn't been consistency. So this is where, again, I point back to like what's the threshold? Like, is it if I place 1 bet, I get, immediately a year? If I place, 10 bets, is it 2 years? Like that hasn't really been shared, or the light hasn't been shed on that. So I'd be curious to see what they figure out there. But I do think that like at some point they're gonna have to look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, we got to figure out, how to operate here, because this is drawing in a significant amount of revenue, and players obviously are clearly, invested. Another thing is, I mean, betting is what, a $13 billion industry. Like there's a lot of money in that realm.
Yes.
And it's hard for a big organization like the NFL to just be like, oh, no, we don't want that money. So of course players are going to be like, well, if I can make money, outside of it, sure. And I in my mind, I've been trying to rationalize like why a player would make bets when you're making way more money on the field than you are in bets. And I think a lot of it has to do with, hey, interest, and it's fun and things like that. Much of what, a lot of fans do as well, because it's fun and hey, I can make quick cash and things like that. But I think at this rate, like players are well aware of what they're doing when they step into this world and the consequences that come with it. And so I think that in this instance, it's 2 things. The league has to be honest about where they're going, and players have to be honest about, where they're going as well.
Yeah.
And I think, you saw that with Isaiah Rodgers yesterday. He didn't necessarily admit to guilt, but he admitted to like, hey, I've messed up essentially, I'll take full responsibility and carry on. So this is him looking in the mirror and say, okay, yep, I know, whatever it is that, that he has done, whatever they confirm, is wrong here, and I'm going to rectify it. But this makes it tougher and tougher when you start seeing more and more of these situations coming up. You really wonder like what the league sending, could be sending mixed messages, by, of course, having these partnerships and then saying no, but our players can't be involved.
So I think I saw this, and maybe you can confirm this. There is a league-wide gambling policy. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think inside of that policy, it mentions that players do have the ability to gamble, except for within the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to work around that. The biggest thing is being in the facilities. You cannot be in team facilities and placing bets. And that's usually what gets people caught up, because where are you 90% of the time? You're at the team facilities.
Sure.
And I think what makes it interesting in the Isaiah Rodgers case is the potential use of an associate's account. So one of the things I was pointing out to someone yesterday was that somewhere in this investigation, they've connected the dots back to Isaiah Rodgers. And so I think that, that's the part of the story that I don't have. And that even if I did, I wouldn't be able to share with you guys. But
fair.
But my point in saying that is that even when you think you've found some sort of loophole, like you're in a fishbowl effect, right? And I've talked about this before, is that when you step into any professional league, any position of power, any position of influence, you're in a fishbowl.
Yep.
Assume everything you see and do can be found.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is one of those things where, like, if you're doing things in the dark, they're definitely going to come to light. And also, of course, because you have your name, tied to organizations and things like that, like organizations can find out, NFL can find out, and I always go underneath the guise of like, hey, if I wouldn't want it blasted on, the front page news, or if I wouldn't want my mother to, to know about it, like I'm probably not going to do it. And that's one of the things that I think it helps to keep in perspective for, these young guys, even these veteran players as well. Like, you're in a professional sport, and your name, your likeness, everything is being looked at all times. So that's important to keep that in front of you. And I'll be really honest with you. I don't think Isaiah Rodgers is a bad person at all, or things like that. No. I know fans are like going crazy on Twitter and Facebook and all these sorts of comments, things like that. Heaven forbid if you've ever made a mistake in your life. Like, I hope that it's not on the internet for everyone to comment on. And we've all done that, right? We've all made mistakes that we're like, oh,
Exactly.
wish I wouldn't have did that, those sort of things.
Yep.
So I pray in this instance, like whatever the final result is, that Isaiah is able to come to some sort of like, hey, acceptance, peace, work towards being better, those sorts of things. I'm never going to kick someone while they're down or things like that. I do, and I respect the rules and respect hey, policies or things like that. So certainly I'm on that side, but I'm also on the human side too. Is that I've made mistakes in my life that, yes, I would not want, again, put on social media for everyone and their, and their mother and cousin to comment on and give their 2 cents about what sort of person they think I am. It's not really fair in that regard. And I think at the end of the day, Isaiah has been a very, very valuable piece of the organization. Lots of fans love him for how involved he's been with the team. His teammates speak extremely highly of him. So that's the things that you want to see going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's you even with me kind of like saying it jokingly, Isaiah Rodgers is probably a name that we've said a lot on this podcast over the last few years because of the fact that it's just like he's absolutely been an impactful player. And the one thing that we've seen out of him is that he went from getting those flashes in the 2021 season to last season being replaced by Brandon Facison somehow, and then just coming in and making the most of it. I think it's just like the way that he tackled on the edge Derrick Henry, keeping him from getting a touchdown, the way that he got a touchdown on the guy. And then, I mean, the way that he covered Devontae Adams almost to a T when he played the Raiders, like, he made the most of those opportunities. And I mean, it absolutely is a sad situation, but the one thing that you want to do is, it's just like, before we hear anything, like they say that the speculation was 100 bets. But until there's something informal that comes out, you absolutely want the best for him, because it's not like this is somebody going out and harming people or doing something along those lines. If it was just betting, then it's just betting. But hopefully it's not him. I think that he probably has a lot more integrity than to play a certain way in game to affect the bet, because then you're talking about something that's very, very different.
Yeah. I mean, if one of the things I saw yesterday was people talking about, potentially, what types of bets he was making and things like that. And that's where I was like, okay, I think we're too in the weeds here now, because now you're talking about things that like completely have no sort of impact now on, what's going to happen. Like, regardless, the bets were made or potentially made, at this point. And you kind of have to deal with the consequences and things like that. So I think at this point, it's now of, okay, if you feel like, potentially that you won't have, Isaiah Rodgers, where do you go from here? How do you respond as a team? What do you do as, as a defensive coordinator, and go from there? And the thing is, listen, fans are going to be upset and, and heated and passionate now. But when the season comes, like, there'll be way more other things to focus on. Like, you got a defense that finished the season 11th in the league, which is still really good. You've got a young offense, right? That is going to need to find its identity. Like, there's a lot of things to focus on than for, you to be ranting into the abyss about, potential bets that, a player could have made.
Absolutely.
And again, I guarantee you that other teams are like, yep, you got to have a short memory in this league if you want to continue to go on, and continue to make some noise, especially for the Colts, who have some ground to make up in the AFC South.
Yeah. And I think it was mentioned last night, they said that this would be a great time for the Colts to drop an Anthony Richardson highlight from OTAs, because then everybody might just forget about it completely.
Well, and that's my point, is that, like, yes, I mean, if you're like me, where you're constantly writing about these things, you're constantly researching and things like that, and having to create content about it, like, of course, like, it's going to be on our minds, right? But fans, you'd be shocked. Fans have a really short memory. The first time that Richardson throws a touchdown, first time that this defense, picks off someone or something like that, like, kind of goes out the window. You know what I mean? Like, you adjust. You know that this is your new normal now, and you adjust. So, I mean, it's going to be fine. Football is here, and that's what most people are wanting anyways. They're just wanting some sort of action. So, go from there.
This one's rough, because Isaiah Rodgers is what you would call, quote unquote, a fan favorite, if we have one.
Of course, yeah.
I would definitely categorize him as a fan favorite.
I mean, but also keep this in mind. Colts fans, they get really attached to players. Like,
Yes.